Hello, welcome to SquishiVision, where I give my immediate reactions, in this case to WandaVision, straight after having watched it. No time to really compile thoughts or make any structured detailed analysis. This is just going to be a stream of consciousness of what I have found. Yeah, well then, that was certainly a different episode. But also normal. Yeah, so we got a break from the sitcom format, and basically we're now we're doing this whole trope of seeing previous events from the opposite perspective, but the perspective change here is a medium shift. So the entire okay. The episode, like much of this series, gives so little and so much at the same time. It's kind of hard to really think because it kind of happens. So I guess let's break it down. As Katie just mentioned in my comments, there was no theme tune. We immediately went straight into the episode. Actually, I think. Which so this episode, so if we're gonna use WandaVision as a kind of study into how different eras do TV, this is 2021 TV. This is filmed contemporary in a contemporary fashion. As we discussed, I think last week or week before, we don't really get opening titles anymore in shows, which is sad in my opinion, because I think opening titles are not a form in themselves. We get straight into action, and I think it's very interesting where we started Rambo's narrative from, which was the reverse snap, the everyone coming back from the blip. I can't remember if they ever gave a name to coming back from the blip, but that's what we saw, which is interesting because we never really got a good look at the kind of the consequences of that. We don't have a chance to. So before WandaVision came, broadcast, our only real look at post blip MCU was Far From Home, because annoyingly, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. decided that it wasn't going to even acknowledge that the blip happened, even though it's kind of a very major MCU event, and somehow it doesn't really make sense for us not to ignore it happened, apart from some brief kind of throwaway lines. So Far From Home dealt with the blip, but it dealt with the blip mostly comedically. I mean, it was mostly the pathos and the emotional weight of Far From Home was Parker losing Stark. Spider-Man having to make his own identity without a mentor ushering him along. But we didn't. The film deliberately decided to take a comedic tone on the ramifications of coming back from the blip. So we get a brief kind of comedic montage of people reappearing during, I think it was a basketball match, and some kind of throwaway jokes about that. But people, online, because of course I have very much speculated and made up scenarios about, well, surely this happened if this person came back, or this happened, and we get a really intense. Honestly, it was an intense, probably the most intense place you could come back to life in is a hospital in this context. So Rambo was someone who was blipped. They came back having 5 years prior being sat next to their mother post cancer surgery. Then they were blipped. And they came back, and you can see, and it was just so intense the way that they portrayed the immense confusion for everyone involved. The doctors immediately are like, well, crap, we've got all these people in our hospitals, which we're not at all able, we don't have the capacity for. Hospitals and lack of capacity is very much a topical issue, but so this seems like that tenfold, and you can imagine that because literally assuming most beds were full when half or more or less of those people died and then came back, and then you've got to basically, so the dogs were thrown into, and it's like the worst place to be collectively thrown into a ray is a hospital because people's lives are at stake. there's just so much to dig into that scene. That's why I'm kind of stuttering. Like, as someone who works vaguely in infrastructure, I say vaguely, very kind of vaguely, but as someone who has a background in IT and has studied computer science, a lot of organizations spend a lot of time writing documents about disaster protocol. Things like, what would you do if, for example, a plane crashed into your servers and you lost your main power supply, or you lost your main data source, or what would happen if there was a flood, or what would happen if there was a fire, or what would happen if there was a terrorist attack. Most organizations will have a document detailing what they do to safeguard. So how they would protect against the data loss, how to protect against power loss. Hospitals will have this. Hospitals will have a document that says, well, this is what we do if for some reason we suffer a major power cut and our backups can't come online. How do we still maintain life support? People will be trained to deal with this. But I guess no one really figured that they'd have to make documents for what would happen if suddenly everyone who died 5 years ago suddenly came back. And so you got a question like, what happened to those people who were mid-surgery when they got blipped away? And then what happened when they were to come back mid-surgery, but the doctors would have moved on? They would probably just immediately and utterly die, painfully. What happened to people who were like mid-surgery and suddenly another kind of patient appeared in front of them, or someone was needed monitoring, but now everyone's confused. It was just like the whole chaos of the scene was frankly terrifying. I mean, I know the Russell brothers have said, Russell brothers or the writers of Endgame have said that when Hulk brought back everyone with his snap, he made sure that people were brought back into non-life-threatening situations. But you do have to question, kind of. I mean, clearly it wasn't absolute because people were bumping into each other. But also, yeah, it was a really haunting way to start the episode. So, and yeah, so this I guess starts shortly after that. So now actually what's interesting is we've got a timeline place for this show. So we see Rambo come back, so we can synchronize Rambo coming back with the scene in Endgame. We skip forward, I think 3 weeks is the time we're given. So 3 weeks later, Rambo returns the sword, and she's given the mission to come and investigate this thing that the FBI have asked for, this Westview case. And then she gets immediately sucked into Westview, and everything else happens over a period of, it seems, days. I think is the implication we're given. It's also interesting. So every one of the last episodes that we've seen, the last 3 episodes, have taken place each on a different day. So far, we've in the universe been 3 days. The 50s episode was in 1 day. The next episode was the 60s, and then the next day was 60s. The next day was the 70s. So these are per day. So we're exactly 3 weeks and 3 days after the blip, which is actually kind of a specific way to date the episode. So most of this episode is actually just showing the other side of what we see. So we get an explanation of what the helicopter was about, and it was actually, and I immediately recognized this. Well, that was the case when we saw the drone being pulled out of the boot. So it was a SAW drone that had been kind of retroed into a toy helicopter, but curiously kept its color scheme. We saw the other side, and I knew it was Jimmy Woo, who was the person's voice when we heard him in episode 2. But we see what happens in the other perspective, and that was that people viewing this stream, for some reason, get a censored version where these, where anything which was kind of an invasion into the reality doesn't actually get transmitted, which is curious, and I'm sure it'll be explored further on. So, whilst we saw previously what happened was the glass smashed, when they were watching it, it just cut from Wanda looking concerned to after the smash. Similar thing happened with Rambo was pushed out of reality. We cut from, and this actually happened when we watched the show as well. We cut scenes, so we didn't see this happen. But also the broadcast episode cut from Wanda approaching Rambo to the end of the episode, essentially. But now we actually get to see the other side of what happened. So we get to see a reverse flip on that as well about how that happened. So yeah, and it was like it was the first episode of this series where we've not actually been in a sitcom. Like the aspect ratio was consistently this. I think it was just not actually measured the screen. I'm assuming it was 2.39 to 1, which is what we are currently in now. apart from like right at the end where the aspect ratio changes. Well, there's one part where we zoom into a TV and it kind of then pulls out and decreases, and then we come back to the credits, and it kind of narrows again. Apart from those brief moments, even when we go back into kind of Westview reality, we're still keeping this aspect ratio. So a more modern aspect ratio, which I still disagree with. I don't know why we feel the need to broadcast TV content in a 16:9 aspect ratio. 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio. When most people are going to view this on a 16:9 screen, and you want to give them the full. But I mean, well, but that's a criticism on this being used normally. I get it has a sensible use here in showing different kind of reality perspectives. We see Darcy Lewis make her return to the MCU after 8 years. Dark World was in 2013, which was Kat Dennings' last appearance in the MCU as Darcy Lewis. And then, I don't think she was a doctor then. I think she's now become a doctor, which I guess makes sense. It has been 8 years. Not been 8 years. In universe, it's been 13 years, because the blip was 5 years. And it was a great use of a character. I was kind of ambivalent towards her character in the 4 films. I think she was funny, but I think she was a bit cheesy. But her return here was welcome, and she brought some really great humour into the episode, which I absolutely loved. Obviously, Jimmy Woo's voice has been heard before, but we get his actual full appearance in this episode again, and I love how he introduces himself with a close-up card magic trick, which is a reference to when we last see him in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I think I love that. So that was great. We haven't really got an explanation about what S.W.O.R.D. is in the MCU, obviously. I mean, I have a passing knowledge of what S.W.O.R.D. is in the comics, but obviously it's been completely different in the MCU. S.W.O.R.D. is apparently a completely... S.W.O.R.D. appears to be a completely independent organisation in the MCU that was actually founded by Rambo's mother, after the events of Captain Marvel, whereas S.H.I.E.L.D. was already pre-existing at that time. They don't seem to have any relation, although they seem to operate very similar. They don't seem to have any kind of relation. Interestingly, we don't see what happens to the beekeeper guy. So we see that side of where that guy came from, and we see that he was basically a sword person in a hazmat suit who crawled through the vents and then appeared there. And obviously in the episode, Wanda reverses time before it happens, so it doesn't happen. We don't actually see what happens to him, which is interesting. There's also so much we don't actually have answered. Like, we know Wanda exerts some control over this, but we don't know exactly how much control she has, or if she was placed here and she's just able to manipulate it. It's unclear. I guess it will be explained until next episode what independence Rambo had. Was Rambo deliberately pretending to be a character in this so she could try and help, or was, once you're pulled into this reality, do you then lose your own control except for brief moments where you're able to kind of exert yourself? That's still unclear. The whole kind of question about what is Vision's state? Is he dead? Is basically all the questions that we are having. It's actually great because all the things that us as an audience are asking about the show is exactly what these characters are asking in the show itself when they're basically writing on their whiteboards. The cute little magnetic whiteboards with the magnetic photos. I want a whiteboard. You can buy these things where it's essentially you can put like plastic on your walls. And you can write on your walls with whiteboard marker and rub it off. I'm going to cover my entire walls and that, so every single wall is something that I can write on. And then someone like, I don't know why I want to do that, but I want to do that and just like draw diagrams all over. Anyway, so we get confirmation that I speculated / guessed last week, which was all of the people in the village, a town, are real people who have been turned into characters, except since Agnes. Agnes didn't have an ID card next to her page, which showed the correspondence between her and a real life person, which was interesting. Um, I'm a detective. What else what occurred to me? I don't know. It's annoying thing about giving a show which gives you bits and pieces by pieces, but doesn't give you the full picture. So it's hard to really speculate on it, isn't it? And basically, we're narratively left off the same place we were last time in terms of what's been going on. I wonder. It was that shot where we cut to. I'm about to burp, by the way. A shot where we cut to Vision. There we go. That shot where we cut to Vision, and it's dead Vision with like his head is stone pulled out of his face. Was like a really was like that was like spooky. That was a spooky shot. That chilled down my back. I'm trying to like flashback through the episode in my brain and see if there's any other clues that I brought up on or anything else that was interesting. But for the most part, I wasn't expecting them to break back into reality this soon. I figured it was going to be we were going to get the episode that, set in the 50s, then the 60s, then the 70s, then the 80s, 90s, and I think the noughties, and then we'd start having the last kind of 3 or whatever episodes. Hang on, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, so the first 6 episodes would be set in contemporary level shows, and then last 3 episodes would be kind of the finale, which we would then jump back into reality. And then we'd get like kind of increasingly amount of kind of flashes into reality. Until then, we wouldn't have an episode completely set in reality until at the end. But I guess it also makes sense to kind of break. Maybe as we'll do every 3 episodes, they'll kind of have one of these episodes where we see kind of what's the crack in reality. Oops, I forgot to mute that, but you can ignore it. Just the EU deciding to reverse Irish border vaccine block, whatever that is. I don't care. So, we didn't get an advertisement in this episode because of course we didn't. That was like a thing in the last 3 episodes. We got like a fake advertisement about and all those advertisements were kind of related to Wanda. So the first one about the toaster was the bomb, which didn't kill Wanda. The second one, which was the Strucker watch, and then the third one was the Hydra soap, which was an adorable nod to the Agents of Shield. We didn't get one this episode. Apart from obviously seeing the previous one. Interesting that none of the main characters commented on these references to, because they said, oh, was Ultron the first? Was mention of Ultron the first mention to our real reality to reality? So it seems that none of them picked up on the obvious Easter eggs of the toaster and the Strucker watch and the Hydra soap. But yeah, and then so yeah, that was my train of threads on that point, and it's finished. So yeah, whatever. I'm trying to work out what else that we saw that was interesting. How long we're going for? 17, no, 18 minutes. Okay, we'll probably end soon. The episode was short again. Speculation was that we would get 3 half-an-hour episodes and then increasingly longer after that. I suppose this was slightly longer and that it was 35 minutes, but I think also the other one was 35 minutes long. It full runtime on Disney Plus, including international credits. Right, there we go. Need to get rid of this notification. Where was I? Sorry, my fart interrupted my train of thought, as is usually the case with me. Again, I guess that's kind of all my reactions, and I can't think of anything else. I think it's why there's something that's bugging me about the show, but I guess that's the great thing about it is there's always something in the background that's kind of like bugging at you, and you can't really figure it out because it's giving you so little. Like we're still don't have much of a clue about what's going on. I'm still not sure how much control Wanda has of the situation. But I do like kind of how quickly everyone kind of grasps the situation. I hate it when you have characters who are meant to be smart, not making smart connections. But most of the characters in this part of reality caught on about what was going on. They were just kind of helpless to really work out how they're meant to intervene. So yeah, I wonder if now we're gonna get more of a kind of back and forth between reality and kind of sitcom reality because of because now we know what's going on. It's been a long week. I'm losing personality clearly. So yeah, yeah. Okay, less of me. I think I need to go. I think this is my time to go. I think this is when we need to put Haaris to bed. Clearly. Oh, I swear there was something else that I wanted to say about this episode. I can't remember. Yeah, hit me. I swear there was a bunch of dialogue which made me think, but I can't remember what it was. No, no. It'll hit me afterwards. I'll be really annoyed that I've got to say on the stream. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this episode. What aspect ratio we'll have next week. Guess you have to tune in to find out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you then.